folks were developing new things in the Midwest, and Ohio is just a hop, skip, and a jump from my native Chicago. So finding out that there was a convention in Columbus that was kind of bringing all awesomeness to you was something worth checking out. So I think I put in a little speaker submission with some other law students at the time, and you were good enough to have us. And once I came, I couldn't stop. So I've been back for 13 years now.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 76 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. I'm your host, Chris, joined as always by Baby Girl, who's in my lap, Pumpkin, who's over there making noise on something. I swear, that cat, she gets into everything. And of course, every week we are joined by a special guest. This guest is one of the most specialists of the specials. Ross, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. You are, were you the first guest we ever had? I think you were, right?
Oh, I was here pretty early. I don't know if I was the first, but
Yeah.
hopefully not the last.
Yeah, well, hopefully not. I think you were. I don't remember stuff, but we have Ross Hersemann here from Loading Law, lawyer specializing in video game law, as well as, what would you say, creative media, things like that.
Absolutely. Interactive
Whoa.
entertainment and all around fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you back. Of course, first of all, before we get too crazy here, we have to talk about the elefante in the room, which is, of course, GDEX. We have 2 episodes, this one and next one, before GDEX, which is next weekend, September 4th through the 7th, 2025, in beautiful Columbus, Ohio. So we still got passes available. We're putting up more information. We just threw up a bunch of our activities that are going to be there. Of course, we have the Underworld Tournament area where we're getting information. And we have got, oh, there we go. Sorry, sound popped in. We have a Saturday night party. So we've got Stage Select is going to be a band. Plus we have a cool demo thing going on. So more information about that. We're getting it out day by day. And you can find all of that right here, the GDEX CorksCon schedule. So you can see we've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can click on any day, see what's going on, get info on it. Thursday, reminder, is Dev Day. So that is a separate ticket, or if you're a GDEX Plus badge holder, GDEX Plus Pro badge holder, then you can come to Dev Day. But we got all sorts of information, and of course, we still have some hotels and stuff. But exciting times. Ross, you are going to join us at GDEX this year. What are you going to chat about?
Absolutely. I think, this has been over 10 years, I think, at this point. I think right now the schedule has got me listed as doing 2 panels. So I'll be talking about the Video Game Law Review 2025 edition. So kind of summing up all of the hot topics in law and policy and business for video games for this last year, which will include everything from AI to some new regulatory issues and political things. And I think we just greenlit a new talk about sexy stuff in video games. We're going to talk about some current platform regulations on adult games and mature games. So if you have an interest in game censorship or free speech, we'll be covering a lot of those things too.
Exciting. Yeah. I think you came to the first OGDE. So that was 13 years ago, back when you were a law student.
Back in the before times.
Yeah, just a bright-eyed youngling. I don't know if I've ever asked, how did you even hear about OGDE or GDEX?
How did I hear? I think.
Why did you, because you live in Chicago?
I did live in Chicago. I have always cared about gaming in the Midwest, much like yourself, Chris. It's always been a big passion of mine, and I wanted to see where folks were developing new things in the Midwest, and Ohio is just a hop, skip, and a jump from my native Chicago. So finding out that there was a convention in Columbus that was kind of bringing all awesomeness to you was something worth checking out. So I think I put in a little speaker submission with some other law students at the time, and you were good enough to have us. And once I came, I couldn't stop. So I've been back for 13 years now.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here. It's going to be exciting. Also, another community thing. This has nothing to do with anything other than I'm just a big Path of Exile nerd. But the new Path of Exile season is starting on Friday. So 2 days, 5 hours, 55 minutes. I don't know what that translates into. Is that like 3 in the afternoon? I guess our time, 3 or 4 in the afternoon our time. On Friday. So I am debating doing a. I am better than at PoE than Elon Musk. I don't know that for 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. I've just certainly never paid anybody to play my account. But I might do that. I might log on for the campaign and just sort of broadcast that out over my Senate campaign. What do you call it? Twitch. Just for fun. And so if others are interested, I don't know, reach out to me. It could be fun. I forget what Path of Exile 2's, is it 8 players? It's 6 or 8 players. I don't know what the multiplayer, like how big a team can be, but we could definitely get, 4 players if people wanted to come on and just play. I play on PlayStation, but it is cross-reference, geez. It's cross-play. And I think, somebody can. Oh no! So what is this? It says through. There's a free weekend, August 29th to September 1st. So even if you hadn't bought it, they are making it free this weekend. So you can come play it. So I'll if I do that, I'll post some information about that. It really just depends on what I got cooking for the rest of the weekend. It's been busy, and of course with GDEX, I always tell everybody, as far as GDEX is concerned, that takes priority. So if I'm flaky, it's because things are on fire. But speaking of GDEX, I just want to talk a few minutes about that. This is year 13, lucky 13. It has been a challenge, we'll say. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the economy. Last year was pretty, I think, challenging with sort of kind of coming back from COVID. We still haven't hit our 2019 numbers. And now we are up on our pre-sales, which is awesome for this year, although our sponsorship is down. So another side reminder, we have a application. It'll be online on our front page. We haven't posted it yet, but we do have a little fundraiser. It's sort of like a help me, kind sir. If you're interested, and anyone watching is just interested in kicking us a few bucks to sort of cover that gap for what we normally would have in sponsorship, that would be awesome, because a lot of our big companies that normally sponsor did not sponsor this year. But Ross, my question to you is, I know that you travel here and there. You're a boot, as they say, at different shows. Have you been going to many shows this year?
I try to. So I think the last big show that I was at was GDC this spring. So now we're in August already, so that's a little while ago. In the meantime, I always try and sprinkle in some of the smaller conventions and Midwest things. So things that I'm always a fan of. I've always said for years that GDEX is my favorite. I'm also a big fan of MDev in Wisconsin, and it's been an interesting chatter going out to conventions lately, because you've mentioned some economic downturn and kind of changes in the way people play games and make games, and it's interesting to kind of collect some different perspectives at conventions like this. But what I've always appreciated about a show like GDEX is how it really does draw in a great crowd from the Midwest, but also from East Coast. So there's a great kind of confluence of different perspectives about people who like to make games and people who like to play games as well.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we have a big student contingent that always comes to GDEX, because
Mm-hmm.
we got a bunch of universities there. So it's always nice to just have a different flavor. And I think one of the things that makes GDEX different than a lot of game events is that we try to focus on like everything. So it's not just about developing the games, but also like, this business building, legal aspects, marketing, like those kind of things they're so important, but people don't think about them because they're excited to make the game, right? That's why they're doing
Right.
the thing. But they don't think about like, well, who actually owns this? And, if we're going to make a deal with a publisher, like what are reasonable terms and how do we set it up? Because should not be a surprise to anybody watching, but a lot of publishers are not always looking out for your best interests, we'll say, and they will carve agreements in a way that makes it pretty challenging. Oh, I'll put my little light on. There we go. So I'm not hiding in the dark here. And so it's always good. And just again, tooting our own horn. Like the most expensive ticket. You talked about GDC, right? I don't know what the GDC was. It like $1,400 or something. I think for a full pass this
Hmm.
year. And then I went to Dice earlier this year. Dice was $3,400 for a ticket. 3,400. Our most expensive ticket is $200. And most of the other ones, I mean, you can get a weekend pass for $60, and that gets you access to all the sessions and stuff. So we try to make it so that students and hobbyists and those who are maybe starting up their business can come to it, because then they get to talk to people like you, and I think that's
Hmm.
like super important. So thank you, Ross, again for coming. This was my long-winded way of saying thank you.
Anytime. No, it's an important conversation to have, and I've always been a little disappointed that larger conventions like that are at the price point that they are, and they obviously have different scholarships available and different tiers for folks that are a little bit more affordable than the full blown badges. But I think that that is really a deterrent for folks getting out. I mean, besides just having enough spoons to go outside and be outgoing and on and talking to folks outside their comfort zones, which is just a reality of going to any convention. I think that price point does keep a lot of talented people and curious people at home. So, from all of us, thanks for putting together a convention that is very unintimidating and is very welcoming and Midwest friendly, so that people can feel encouraged to come out at a good price point and have conversations with people outside their comfort zones. It's a wonderful thing to see.
Well, we're doing our best here, and we appreciate it. So, uh, first, we had an interesting thing. Where is it here? So this is. I'm just pulling this from Columbus Dispatch for fun because I saw that the Dispatch actually wrote an article. But Columbus Dispatch, the PlayStation 5 price going up. Sony announced price hikes. So you and I just over text yesterday, we had a little bit of an interesting conversation. I think we're on board. Not on board. I think we're on the same page, sort of in similar ways about. And I tell my students this: like the price of games has been going up, pretty recently. We're seeing like a $70-$80 price point now becoming the norm. And I know a lot of folks were complaining about that. I am of the tact of, and let me asterisk this, because this assumes that the game developers are actually making good quality games and not like crap that they're just trying to shovel out, that games have been underpriced for a long time. And if you look at, there's all this conversation about inflation and things like that. Uh, Games haven't changed their pricing despite any of the inflation in any meaningful way, really, in over a decade. There's been little like drops here and there where maybe a company might release like a $70 instead of a $60 or whatever. And then, of course, you've got the digital deluxe packages and those kind of things. But just the base game as a whole generally has been $60 for a long time, bumped up a little bit quickly to 70. Now we're starting to see 80 pop up here. I think you and I are on the same page in that games are still probably as a dollar per experience cost are still pretty good. Is that a fair thing to say mostly?
I think just in terms of minutes and hours played, video games tend to present the best value just per dollar of what goes into it. If you look at how much it costs to go to the movies or how much it costs to go to the theater or an escape room or any other kind of entertainment avenue, you can look at games and figure if I pay 50 or $60 for this game, I know I'm going to get this many hours of enjoyment out of it, and it's always been a fantastic value. And for decades, games have been kind of recession proof, kind of inflation proof. Those prices have been fairly locked, regardless of how big that game is, whether you've got a giant sprawling game like Grand Theft Auto or something very straightforward uh, that's, a 2 hour platforming campaign. Those prices tend to be the same for the most part at the AAA level. And we've gotten very comfortable with that over the last couple decades. And maybe this is the year when we really have to pull the band-aid and agree game developers deserve a living wage, and if we want this amount of content, and if we want it at this quality, and if we want it with this functionality, it's going to cost a little bit more. The perks that folks kind of demand of their games now are not as easy to implement as they might think. Things like crossplay, things like cloud saving, things like next generation graphics and sound and everything else that costs money, time, and effort and talent. And I like to think of this, maybe because I am in the industry and I'm a little close to how things get made. I just think of that as a way to support people who make things that I love, that I can't get anywhere else. And the more niche the entertainment product, I think the more I want to support them. So am I disappointed that console prices and game prices might be going up? Of course, I want to save a dollar like everyone else. But instead of thinking of, our evil capitalist overlords taking 10 more dollars from me every time I buy a game, I look at opportunities to find the value in things and support, people that I really am encouraged and inspired by.
Sure. Yeah, I more or less agree with you. I think that we have seen like something like Cyberpunk or The Witcher or whatever, like these big beefy games, or Baldur's Gate 3 came out recently, and I just think it's hard to like. Those games are amazing. I don't know how many hours I've put into Cyberpunk. I beat that game like once a year generally, and I think it came out like 2018 or something. So I've probably beaten that game 10 times. Easily worth the $60, $70 I paid for it, right? But I think one of the things that you hit on, and this is going to tag into, do you share this opinion with the consoles, particularly with the console price increases having to do with the tariff costs, not with the manufacturer's desire to raise the cost? Does that change your calculus at all?
I just know that the profit margins on hardware are always tight. They've always been tight. It's always been an economic model of, cheap razors and expensive razor blades, where hardware manufacturers lose money on hardware sales and then make it back in licensing or software over the years. So if they've already drawn their margins as tightly as they can, and if there's a new tariff policy out there that's jacking up costs in a way they didn't anticipate, I can see, just from a numbers game, why they can justify raising the price of a Switch 2 or a PS5, because it's manufactured internationally. I can understand how they got there. I think that it's a shame, because consoles are already expensive enough, especially for students and kids and people that are a little tight on cash these days. But I can kind of see both sides of this, and as frustrated as I am, my hope is, it has nothing to do with economics, just has to do with optics. I hope that manufacturers, publishers, and kind of top-down folks will find ways to deliver other value to us in exchange for that hike. So I would love to see if Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft found ways to give us a little extra value in reciprocity with those tariffs that we might be seeing.
That would be lovely.
Give me a free month of Xbox Live or Game Pass, or
Yeah.
upgrade me to PlayStation Plus, or do a pack-in cartridge or something to offset it. Things that wouldn't cost the manufacturers, publishers, and distributors as much on the back end, but that would at least communicate to all of us: we're not doing this to punish you. We're not doing this to hate on you. We've got to make a dollar like everyone else, and if you can, from a publisher side, I imagine they would love to be reassured that if they invest in a particular game, platform, or product, that the consumers, that the customers are going to be there. Because I know that's always the risk when I talk to investors. They're like, well, I want to
Sure.
support this cool, weird indie thing, but I don't know if they're going to show up. Sometimes gamers are a fickle bunch, and they don't vote with their wallets as much as they should. So I'm as
Yeah.
always, cautiously optimistic that this might work out in the long term.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that this is a interesting thing where we made an agreement not to go too into politics, so we won't go into the politics part of it. But I do think that there's a risk here around the uncertainty that publishers, manufacturers, others are. I mean, we even saw it with Nintendo a little bit with the Switch 2 release, where they had some mixed messaging, and then they postponed the release date and stuff like that. Where it gets tricky because you can't really plan out a massive market shift, like right, we're at, what are we at, 2025? My guess would be we're probably not going to see a new PlayStation or Xbox until at least 2027, maybe 2028, if market conditions get bad. So I don't know if it's. Ooh, do you want to get down, sweetie? Baby says hi. Um, so I don't know if it's something that necessarily the big three need to do at the moment, but if the tariffs, just as examples, one element, if those keep shifting all over the place, it's really hard to plan a product launch because you don't know from one week to the next what's going to be the number, and so with uncertainty, that breeds issues. My other thought and concern is that right now the United States is the number one purchaser of video game products. We're the biggest sort of slice of the pie, as it were. But if the costs keep going up, particularly on the consoles, which is your entry into, right? If you don't own the console, you don't buy the software. And so if the consoles start becoming prohibitively expensive for a lot of people, that might really start to discourage the sales of software. And if that starts, then now these companies are going to start to look for ways that they can go into other markets to make money, which then opens up the question, I think we've had, if you want to use the term privilege, I think one of the privileges that we have by being Americans is that we generally get every product first. Like we're the first market that most companies deliver products to. But if it starts to become too much of a pain in the ass, we may not be the first to get games. 2K, which is based in England, right? They might be like, oh, we're just going to start doing EU and Asia as our first markets, and then we'll get around to the United States. I don't know if there's an answer to that question or it's more of a statement, but just kind of curious your thoughts on hypotheticalizing the future.
I think that we're moving in a direction where we're seeing some more splits in the market. I think that we're running to opposite ends of the spectrum. So for things like PC gaming and hardware prices, I think that some hardware is becoming more of a luxury item than it used to be. I think that higher tier gaming PCs and graphics cards are getting more expensive. We're seeing $3,000 top tier cards from NVIDIA, and that's pricing a lot of people out of hardcore PC gaming. So they might be more casual. They might be opting for less expensive systems, which means that games that are going to be popular might be better optimized. This might push some more stress onto developers to try and make more pixels get pushed with less power. Or it might mean that people are going to be playing more casual games or less graphically demanding games, more aesthetically optimized games. So we might see a shift in some trends. If people can only get a hold of indie games, they might play less AAA games. If AAA games are too expensive or cost prohibitive or hardware prohibitive, we might see a shift in trends. I do like to think that all of those things can coexist. I don't think it's a zero-sum game, but I just think that some hardware might end up becoming a luxury item. Some things might be more expensive for the casual hobbyist. And a great example, you can look at games as entertainment, but you can also look at 4K Blu-ray collecting and see how much money people will pay for their steel books and their 4Ks of their favorite films, and those can outstrip video game costs. I've seen $60, $100, $200 box sets for 4K Blu-rays, and that's for content that was made 20, 30, 50 years ago, that only costs remastering and restamping. So I'm hoping people will be innovative. But I think that costs will change. My folks in Europe are always the first to tell me that their hardware is infinitely more expensive than ours, and they get it significantly later than we do. So we do have a privilege in the US to get a hold of some of this stuff earlier and cheaper. And I don't know, maybe the pendulum will swing the other way.
Always the optimist, Ross. Well, that brings us to this little article. This is from Tweaktown. I don't even know what the hell Tweaktown is, but here we are. PS5 may get more price increases in the US, analysts warn. So, analysts schmanalysts. But this, I think, sort of hits on what you were saying. This is the TLDR. Sony has raised the PlayStation prices globally with the US PS5 Pro now at $750, signaling potential further hikes. Despite record Q1 revenues, Sony focuses on profit amid market volatility by prioritizing digital spending and monthly active users over console sales, aiming to maximize the revenue and the margins. So I think to your point, they're focusing on how can they get those higher margin sales and services out, whereas the console's important. Now it's also, again, everything has an asterisk, right? It's also important to remember the PS5 has been out for 5 years, going on 6 years, so it has already had a very long runway of its initial sales. So I think it kind of makes sense that Sony is probably like, well, we've already gotten our 80-90% of our install base that we're ever going to get on this device. So let's then switch our priorities over to the higher margin activities, which would be things like PlayStation Plus and software sales and, maybe some of those, what do they call them? Like the PlayStation summer sales or whatever, to kind of incentivize software purchasing. But it seems pretty in line with what you're saying. Like, one of the nice things, regardless of all the nonsense going on in the U.S. sort of politically, and all of the bad things that come with capitalism, one of the nice things about capitalism is that it generally tends to have sort of a system of buffers for when things get volatile, and there's adjustments. Not always great, don't always benefit the consumer, but more or less there can be times where a market can sort of handle a storm or two, and keep things relatively there. And also, to your point, there are so many indie game experiences. I think we tend to think about the big seller, like everyone's waiting for GTA 6, right? Because that's theoretically, I don't know. I think I saw an analyst say that they're going to make $2 billion in the first like 30 days or something, which is insane. But there's tons of smaller indie games that you can get for $10, $20, $30, $40 that are great magical experiences, and they're worth looking into. And then, of course, we just mentioned sales. So, I think that's all within the realm of the things you were talking about, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Absolutely. And I always want to give a shout out as well. No paid endorsement here, but just something I notice is you start seeing shifts. We're talking about the costs of software and how much games cost, but we also haven't talked about Game Pass. So we have these alternative platforms where you can still get AAA content for a flat rate. And it surprised me very much when I was playing. I was logging into Game Pass this month to see what was new or what was there, and I saw some AAA titles that I wasn't expecting to be included. So seeing the new Doom Dark Ages as part of my Game Pass subscription and seeing the remaster of Gears of War on there was very interesting.
Yep.
So the rules are kind of getting rewritten, where I never would have thought 10 years ago that AAA titles like that would be part of a standard subscription model for games.
Yeah.
And I certainly never would have thought to see something like Gears of War on PlayStation. So I
Yeah.
think we're seeing
Well, that's what
some
happens when
cross-platform things.
owned by the big Xbox, the big MS. Like, they'll just throw your stuff, But yeah, I just heard, I haven't followed up, so I don't know how 100% true this is, but I heard that Sony's bringing the Spider-Man games to Xbox. So don't take that as gospel. It was something I saw this morning when I was quickly getting ready. So I have not verified that. Also, I'm not a games journalist, so I don't know. Don't come to me for that verified news stories. But I think that Games Pass, I talk about this with my class, is that Games Pass, I think, is a really good example of the free market sort of capitalist thing working as it should, which was, real quick TLDR, PlayStation was outselling Xbox dramatically. Xbox, I think, hoped that this new generation, they'd be able to kind of make up some ground. It became obvious that they weren't, and PlayStation was still outselling them. So what do you do when you're being outsold by a competitor? Well, in a functioning free market that is actually trying to put customers first, you try to create better services or products. And that's what Xbox did. They created Games Pass, which was a direct, shot across the bow to PlayStation Plus, which PS Plus was I think it was it was a solid service, but it didn't like blow my socks off or anything, right? You got like 2 free games a month, which was cool. But Xbox knew that they needed to come up with something big, and so they did, and then that forced PlayStation to revamp their PlayStation Plus service to make it even better. So the end result for consumers was that no matter what platform you're on, we both got better quality services, which is, ideally how the market should function. And I've been on the record many times saying that I think the games industry functions really well on like this three peg approach where we have three major players in the market. That seems to be a really good space. So the obviously Xbox, Nintendo, and PlayStation have been the three for 30 years now, and I think that's really good. I think if we drop down to two, we'd see some problems, and once we start getting up to four or five, it becomes messy because you only got so much money to throw around to buy consoles. Although I know you like to buy lots of stuff, so you're an exception to the rule, and you're a big Sega guy. So I'm sure if Sega produced a new console, you'd be all about it. But
I literally just typed in the chat Sega Dreamcast 2.
mm,
Um, if only. I there's always other platforms out there, but I think that you're right. I think that there's always seems to be a big three, even if there's a second tier of other competitors out there.
yeah, and then of course, you can't forget the PC market, which is obviously huge, and you've got. But even in that, it's kind of interesting because you kind of have three big players. You've got Steam, you've got GOG, and you've got Epic. And those three kind of play in a similar spec. I mean, yeah, you got the like Xbox store, and now Games Pass is on PC too, PC as well. But it just seems like three is a pretty good number in our space for that. Car manufacturers, you've got more, but that's different because when you buy a Ford, that doesn't preclude you from getting. Like you can't, there's no like Nissan only road that you can't drive if you buy a Ford, right? Or like, the Honda Expressway. So it's slightly different.
Be
Um,
careful, Chris. You're going to give them ideas.
yeah, well, who knows? I do think capitalism is in a quite a state right now, we'll say. But um, also, the last sort of peg in this conversation is as of now, tariffs have not hit software products. They haven't hit digital products in the way that they are, hitting physically manufactured products because it's a lot harder to kind of be like, well, a digital project. I mean, think of something like Call of Duty, right? Like there's thousands of people that work on each Call of Duty title in their 3-year dev cycle, and so like if half of them worked overseas, is that considered a product not made in the United? Like it's a lot harder to kind of think about a digital product in that sense.
Hmm.
But let's just again, we're just talking about ideas. What if we do find out that in the next 3 months the administration starts taxing digital products on games? Do you think that will have a similar effect, an ongoing effect, or is it just kind of more of the same in what we've been talking about?
I think it'll definitely affect things. I know whether it's my indie clients or my AAA titles, my AAA clients, folks manufacture things everywhere. They have independent contractors worldwide. We're games, even though they may say like this is an American-made game, this is a Finnish game, this is an Australian game. They're composed, compiled, assembled from parts built worldwide. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be very interesting to try to pin down what would qualify as an international or foreign game for the purposes of those definitions. It's if I have an artist in a country that's not the U.S. and they do a majority of my art assets, but all the code is compiled and baked here in the U.S. Does that make it a U.S. product? If you don't even see the code, if you're interacting with art and music, I have no idea, and I promise you, the lawmakers working on those definitions don't either. Um, we can draw some inspiration from things like the automotive industry, where we have cars that are assembled with parts that are manufactured and sourced from around the globe. But I don't know. I think that those costs, I hope that they're negligible. I hope they're absorbed into things. But those are the kinds of factors that are going to lead to potentially prices going up, like we've talked about. If we do that $10 bump of games from $50 to $60, $60 to $70, hopefully that'll offset costs of tariffs or anything else. But I promise you, from the lawyers I talked to, they're looking for any way to regulate this kind of content or get an extra dollar off of it. Here in Chicago, Cook County has an amusement tax that back in 2015 was determined to apply to sales of software on the Xbox Live platform or on Steam. And this was a tax that used to just apply to pool halls and bowling alleys, and now it applies to Steam. So
Oh,
if
interesting.
there's a way to tax something, if there's a way to make something more expensive, I promise you, someone somewhere will find a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean this again. We won't get too deep into it, but this goes to my beliefs that just of the more and more of the burden is being shuffled onto individuals these days,
Mhm.
and not only financially but just time wise and expectation wise. And I think it's creating a not good space for a lot of us. But um, so I also think that we are, how do I phrase this? Um, I think I'll just say it. I'll just say it, and it won't come. I talked to a lot of people. A lot of people complain about pricing, and a lot of people complain about. I saw an article the other day about was the current generation of consoles, it was a total waste. And I'm just sitting here. I'm like, what in the fuck are you people talking about? Like, this is the best time to be a gamer ever. Like the home consoles, both the Xbox Series X and the PS5 and PS5 Pro are like great devices. They're super fast. My PlayStation 5 hasn't. The only time my PS5 ever crashes generally is when I'm playing Fallout, and that's just Bethesda, and we for some reason we just accept the fact. But there are so many games, so many experiences, so much great stuff. I feel like you know just quality wise, there's probably never been a better time to be a video gamer right now. Um, and we can look back nostalgically. I love the Super Nintendo era. I loved growing up with all the games, and there definitely was a different vibe when we were growing up to video games. It was like exciting and all the sort of exploration of what computers can do and everything. But just in terms of sitting down and playing games, I think by and large there's just so many really really good games. Um, that being said, there's also a lot of nonsense. I know that you and I have talked over the years about things like loot boxes and season passes and things like ways to monetize different products. But I've also seen a lot of companies. PlayStation's pretty big on this. CD Projekt Red, where a lot of companies are, if you want to call it even like going back to basics, where they're just like, we're just going to create a really solid game experience and we're not going to stick in all this fluff. There was even an article yesterday about how the new Call of Duty is getting rid of a lot of the skins that they had in the previous ones because it just sort of visually and losing its sense of identity. But it seems like a lot of folks are just, I guess, saying, and maybe hopefully companies are responding to it. It's like, could you just sell me a really good game and not have this other nonsense in there? Like, can I just play a game without having to sign in to your subscription service or whatever? So I'm kind of curious. I mean, are you? This is more like a feeling I have as I just navigate the industry, but I'm curious. Are you sort of seeing the same thing? A little bit of a pullback on some of these extraneous and maybe less than savory monetization practices and things like that?
I'm not sure. I think with some demographics, definitely, but not all. So some of the things that might, irk you and I, Chris, about games right now might be someone else's favorite. So I was playing Fall Guys this week. I was playing Splitgate 2 this week and a little bit of Fortnite.
Oh,
And
we should do
to
some Fall
me,
Guys together. That'd be fun.
we should. And to me, those menus look bloated, and the way that they are prioritizing in-game assets and skins and aesthetic DLC for cost, it kind of makes my eyes bleed. It frustrates me because I come from a generation where I want to pay one price for my game and I have access to all the features and I can unlock everything else through skill instead of paying for it.
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
like loot boxes. I don't need the costumes. I don't need the skins. I don't need the, emotes and other things. But some people love that, and I don't want to take that from them. And it's just a different pricing model. So Splitgate and Fortnite and Fall Guys are all games that are free to play, and then they have that content there. If you want to give back, if you want to, support the team, support the devs, the publishers, our evil distributor overlords, whoever the case may be, it's there if you want it. So I think maybe there's just more sifting, but I don't know if it's a uniform market trend that all games are implementing those features. I think that people AAA is always going to flirt with mechanics to see if they can find a way to optimize, they would say, or find new monetization strategies for things, whether that's adding season passes to Halo, uh, which is something that never used to exist in the 360, original Xbox Live days, or adding loadouts because it's a mechanic that was popular in Call of Duty and they thought it would sell more copies. But, I think it's a thing that'll innovate. So as long as there's a customer base for it, they'll implement whatever features that we use or that they think are successful or financially viable.
There you go. The more you know.
We'll
Uh,
see.
yeah, yeah. I again, I'm curious about the GTA 6 because I don't know
Mhm.
if Rockstar is going to be able to help themselves and insert a whole bunch of like online content stuff into GTA 6, and I just want, maybe I'm old, maybe we're just old people complaining about old people things, but I just want a game that I can sit and play. And the Luddite in me is like, I think the internet is like borderline unusable these days. It's just filled with nonsense and crap. And I I just think that the user experience is terrible on a lot of things. And now we've got AI and everything. Like I spend so we use Google Suite for like everything, like our Google Workspace, whatever it's called now.
Mhm.
And like every time I load up a Google Doc to do something, I've got to click like two or three notifications off because it's like telling me about something. I was like, I do not care about your Gemini. I don't care about Gemini. Stop telling me about Gemini. Go away. I just want to use my spreadsheet, you know?
It's just telling you about a roller coaster at Cedar Point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even now we're on Discord. I'm getting a Wendy's ad over on the corner here. So, um, I, there's this book. It's called The Paradox of Choice. Really good, interesting book. I've talked about it before, but there's a line in there that he says is everything was better back when everything was worse. And that's always kind of stuck with me. Where the idea is like, yes, today is actually better, more or less, in virtually every conceivable way, by every like real metric. But there is a lot of other crap that's just like far worse. And my worry is that the games industry, by and large, has I think managed to kind of keep a lot of the worst instincts at bay, and that might be a reflection of how many young people how many kids are in the video game industry, and so your Nintendos, Sony's, Microsofts are careful about how they allow some of this content for developers to get there. But my worry ultimately is that the dollar will win the race, and it can be even stuff like thankfully like PlayStation, for example. I don't remember which OS it was, but there was a whole bunch of ads on the front screen. Xbox had the same issue where the front, like whenever you log onto the console, the front page of the Xbox was just a bunch of ads, and they were ads you didn't care about, and it slowed down the interface because it had to load all that content in the background, all those videos and stuff. They both pulled back, and now I think the PS5 OS is pretty fast, pretty slick. But I don't want to go down there. I don't really have a question. I'm just ranting because I love video games so much, and I want us to be better. I want us to be focusing on the customer and there you go. To be focusing on the customer and the quality of the experience. I think that's one of the things that makes games better than most other I don't know, just most other activities you can do, is that it's really ultimately at the end of the day super focused on how do we make the best player experience. And I don't want us to lose sight of that. Um, that's it. No question. Just me talking.
I don't blame you, Chris. When I was at the movies a couple weeks ago, the sheer amount of trailers, before that movie kicked off was staggering. And if I'm listening to music on Google or Spotify or somewhere else, the amount of ads that find their way in there really seems disproportionate to what I remember being on the radio or what I, uh, being at the theater years before. And my N64 didn't have ads when I booted it up, but I suppose this is the price we pay for next gen quality content at our fingertips around the clock all the time with no downtime. So, what are you
Yeah.
gonna do?
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately that's I don't know. I'm also a curmudgeon. Like I don't wait for after credit scenes in movies. I have
Mhm.
this thing. I'm gonna write a PhD thesis on it someday when I'm not doing other stuff about how Disney is responsible for more deaths than any other, more loss of life than any other activity, minus maybe the flu in human history. Because it just I'm joking here, people, but the idea that like if everybody at every Disney movie is waiting 10 to 15 minutes through the credits to see the end credit scene, times 15 minutes times hundreds of thousands of viewers, millions of viewers for each movie, that's a lot of loss of life, of people just sitting around wasting their time. So I kind of have a thing like I don't wait for end credit scenes because I just my life and my time are too valuable to
Mhm.
to waste like that. So I'm being slightly hyperbolic, people. Simmer it down. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, it comes down to being respectful of the your users, your players, and their time, and making sure that you're creating really good experiences. And I think that's ultimately where I give like indie games, I give a little bit more slack because a lot of indie games are small teams, they're new, sometimes a little janky or whatever. I give less slack to the AAA devs who are like, you should know better. You should know better. Like, you don't need to do this to us. You don't need to bloat the game out. Um, Again, I'm very interested in GTA 6 because I think CD Projekt Red has really shown how you can create quality experiences without the bloat. Like all of their side quests are usually really good. You're not traveling around like, collect 15 rat pelts and then come back to this other thing and then go over here. Like they tend to be very streamlined in their experience. So I'm curious if GTA will have learned those. I mean, I have to imagine they would have, right? Rockstar is very good at what they do. Um, and maybe there'll be some new things. Maybe we'll be surprised. Maybe they'll create a whole new quest structure idea that makes things really exciting. I don't know. Um, was this like you could delete your save? Sorry, I'm just looking at game where you could destroy the credits. I don't know. Smash Bros. Uh,
That
so
sounds like
anyway,
fun.
yeah, we're kind of getting a little bit towards the end of our show here, and I'm just kind of curious. We're gonna connect to GDEX. We're gonna have a couple drinks, but what are you playing these days? I mean, what are you excited about? There's actually a bunch of cool games coming out over the next like 2-3 months here. I mean, Outer Wilds 2 is coming out, Borderlands 4, Path of Exiles thing. There's another one that I'm totally blanking on right now. But anything exciting in your radar that you're looking forward to playing? Do you even have
It's
time to
funny
play
this.
anymore?
Oh, not as much as I'd like. It's funny. The games that I look forward to, there's certainly new things coming out that I'm excited about, but for me, it's a lot of just wading through my backlog. There's stuff on my shelf I bought 10 years ago that I'm finally getting to, or things that I'm revisiting that are kind of blowing my mind. So one of them is the remastered Gears of War that just came out yesterday, I think.
Yep.
So that might be my weekend plan. But other cozy things out there are fun. I'm looking forward to diving into Tales of the Shire a little bit, which, for those who are a fan of Middle Earth, seems like a good cozy place to hang out. And
Yeah, I think
then
you said your
the
wife is spending some time in the
yeah,
Shire.
she's getting into the Shire. And then at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Doom Dark Ages is something that I just dove into the other day, and that's just scratching that itch for murdering hell demons and everything else.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't jumped into. I did 2016, but I didn't do Eternal, which I hear is really
Hmm.
good. And then people like Dark Ages as well. But yeah, I have not jumped back into hell yet, but I will someday. I'm looking forward to. I'm cautiously eyeballing Borderlands 4. I enjoyed
Hmm.
Borderlands 3 as a gameplay experience, though the story didn't really grab me too much. And then Outer Worlds 2, man, I'm really excited to see what Outer Worlds 2 is going to look like. I enjoyed the first one a lot, and hopefully they were able to expand on it in some interesting ways. Because I'd like to do that. I got to finish Fallout 4 for my campaign. Death Stranding 2. I started like 10 minutes of that. I want to get back into that. I just don't have time, man. Don't have time. Changing the world takes a lot of effort.
As well, you should. It takes a lot of time too. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, yeah. Sweet. Well, I think that there's a lot of exciting things in the game space. There's still a lot of concerns. I mean, layoffs are still a big thing. AI, which we sort of talked about before the show, is sort of an unknown that potentially can cascade very negatively in the industry. But I guess this all kind of boils down to it really just boils down to trust. And it's like, do we trust that these organizations, these companies are going to be doing the right thing and looking out for the people that they employ that make these games? You know, the creative engine of our industry at the end of the day is people. You know, like AI, fine, you can use AI and create assets and whatever, but like if you don't have folks that are really trying to tell something or express something, I don't think you just don't have a game. You know, like you don't have a creative effort. And so I guess I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll absorb some of your optimism, Ross, because
There you go.
I try to be an optimistic guy, but also, I don't know. Xbox really hurt me a little bit when they fired those like almost 10,000 people, and then like 3 weeks later they're up on stage being like, "We just had a record profitable quarter," and everyone's like, "F you!" Like you just destroyed 10,000 people's lives so that you could replace it with AI or whatever, and then yeah. But that's we could talk a whole hour on that, but
That's a whole other story.
yeah, but I think that there's exciting times in the game space coming up, and GDEX is always very refreshing, because you just get to see people who are making exciting things and really like talking about their games and their products. The Skookum guys who did the Pedestrian, they're coming back and with their Quiet on the Set game. They have this like I don't really. They told me about it. I guess it's like some sort of facial tech that they're going to bring to the show, so guests can get scanned and see how the technology works for their game. Which I was like, that's awesome. They sent me an email like, "Do you think anyone would be interested in that?" I was like, "Yes, I think people would think that is very, very cool." So when it comes down to it, there's always people at the ground floor that are excited about games and the games industry and are willing to put their blood, sweat, and tears into making it better. So maybe that's our lesson for the day.
The more you know.
The more you know. Any last things you want to talk about, Ross, before we wrap it up here?
Just two plugs for cool things at GDEX. So I'll be doing two talks out there, and one of them is going to be about, business strategies for creative freelancers and folks in the game industry. So if you enjoyed me talking about legal things or have more questions about the current legal status of the game industry, come on by, say hello. I don't bite, I promise. And my other talk is going to be the sex talk at GDEX this year. So I'm going to be talking about some new policy innovation with major platforms and maybe censorship, maybe free speech. We'll see. I see we got a question on that. What's the thorniest legal tangle in my mind right now? I think it is the sex talk subject that I'll be covering at GDEX. I'm talking about a variety of different platforms that are bowing to lobbyist pressure to kind of regulate our games and censor them, which might be the right thing depending on the game, but maybe not. So come see my talk and hear my talk, and we will figure it out.
Yeah. I'm gonna go on a quick 20-second rant just because that's what I do. But I find it very funny that this free speech conversation that we're having in politics right now, and somehow. Again, I don't really believe in right and left. I don't think that's a real thing, but just for the sake of a 30-second little thing here, I'm just like, where have you guys been living? Like when we were growing up, it's always the religious right. It's always the religious. Ozzy Osbourne, Marilyn Manson, heavy metal, Dungeons and Dragons, video games, Mortal Kombat, Doom, comic books. Like it is always the religious right that has been pushing on the censoring of content. And in some cases, it's true. I mean, we've definitely had movies and video games where you're just like, oh, geez. But I'm one of those people that view video games as a work of art, and I think that we need to give them the creative landscape to be able to test out new ideas and to come up with things. We should be mindful of their impacts, but I would rather live in a world where we maybe get a couple things wrong, and it's we're all kind of like, "Ooh, that might have gone past the line," but at least we're giving creatives the sort of artistic license to try some. That's me. Not everybody has to agree with that, but before also, Ross, is there any are there any game events or shows in the Chicago area that listeners should be aware of? Anything coming up?
There are, for my Chicago contingent in early September, the Chicago Indie Game Showcase is coming back at Hairpin this year. So there's going to be over 40 Chicago-made and Midwest-made indie games showcased there. There might be snacks, there might be drinks, but that'll be coming up soon. We just had Fan Expo here in Chicago that everybody really enjoyed. And I know going into the fall, all the game dev students here in Chicago will be having their own showcases and events coming up. So lots in the pipeline, lots of fun things coming up.
Awesome. Well, Ross, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate you being on. We'll see you in about a week for some exciting GDEX times. I'll buy you a drink. And if anybody is watching the show and they see Ross around and want to say hi, feel free to, I don't know, pick his brain on some of the sassiest/sexiest legal issues, I guess. We're gonna,
As always.
yeah. Ross gives the sexiest talks, we hear, and that's the word on the street. So, thank you everybody for watching. This has been the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Reminder, we do this every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern, and then we post it on YouTube. So feel free to hop on if you're in the chat. We do try to answer questions as they're posted in the chat. So thank you for the chat and the great conversations. But otherwise, I am Chris, joined as always by Baby and Pumpkin. Special thank you to our special guest, Ross. Thank you again for being here. And we will see you all next week.